welcome everybody to our November New Yorkers for Mental Health Alternatives meeting. Thank you for coming out on this kind of brisk evening. I don't know how the weather is down where you guys, where everyone else is, but it actually feels like it's getting to be late fall now. It was a little frightening before. So we do have turkey tail, lion's mane, dryad saddle, peach tea. It is cold. Amy yelled at me for making only a cold tea. I'm so sorry. And I'm gonna save our announcements and things for after Eugenia presents, but I would love to introduce Eugenia Bowen. She is an internationally known food and nature writer whose work has appeared in many anthologies, magazines, and newspapers. She's a member of the faculty at the New York Botanical Garden, where she teaches classes on mycophagy and psychedelic mushrooms. She is the author or co-author of 9 books on food and biology, including the category staple Mycophilia, and most recently, Have a Good Trip, Exploring the Magic Mushroom Experience, which just came out. She has been nominated for or won a variety of awards, including a James Beard Award. Eugenia is featured in the documentary directed by Louis Schwartzberg, The Fantastic Fungi, that came out in 2019, and in the Netflix children's show about food, Waffles and Mochi. Really? I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's awesome. Actually, that's really good. It was like my highlight.
Yeah. So I'm sure you're going to talk about your book, and you feel free to take us wherever you want. If you want to describe Have a Good Trip, then, that's the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks, Pam, and thanks everybody for inviting me. I'm delighted to be on and to be able to introduce this book. Pam and I talked a little bit the other day about what might be the subject, and I guess we came to the conclusion that it would be good to, talk a little bit about what this book is and isn't. And then she encouraged me to bring in a kind of personal element. So I'm going to do that for
Awesome.
better or worse. But I thought, it used to be, so I've written about mushrooms and been in the mushroom world a long time. And it used to be that when I go to a dinner party or something and someone would say, "So what are you interested in?" And I go, "Well, mushrooms and molds and spores and stuff like that." They would start like looking for somewhere else to sit, right? It was a real turnoff. But that's no longer the case. Now, when I'm at a dinner party and I'm sitting next to someone and they say, "Well, what are you into?" And I go, "Oh, I just wrote a book on magic mushrooms." That's it. That's all I'm talking about for the rest of the night. I'm just answering questions. What about microdosing? Can you really cultivate in your house? I mean, it goes on and on and on. So, Have a Good Trip. This book really seeks to answer all those questions, but it doesn't make any recommendations. It's a resource, not a guide. So Have a Good Trip is about the psilocybe mushrooms. So I don't write about other psychoactive mushrooms for 2 reasons. One is I just had space issues, and there's so much to write about psilocybe. And also, most people aren't really taking that. I know there's a whole Amanita muscaria thing happening, but that's another subject, another book, really. Um, in particular, so I write about the psilocybe species genus, but in particular, psilocybe cubensis and its cultivars, because that's what most people consume. So the content of Have a Good Trip, which is really kind of like a spicy name that my editor came up with. I was going more towards citizen psychopharmacists and stuff, and they put the kibosh on that. And Have a Good Trip has been a lot of fun. Sometimes I have to explain it a little bit since I'm not a guide. I'm a resource. And by the way, that's a really important fact when it comes to liability. It's unwise, at least for someone like me, to make recommendations, to suggest what people should and shouldn't do. And I avoided that 100%. but the content is wide ranging because I'm seeking to answer like a dinner party's worth of questions. So I write about the anatomy of a trip, from the way psilocybin moves through the body and mind. I write about bad trips and various harms, actually at length. I don't think anyone to date has really given bad trips and their and well, what's known about them and anecdotal data about them, to short. I think been given short shrift, and it's good for people. It's helpful for people to know about them. I write about how people keep trips on course. I cover foraging and cultivating the mushrooms, the limitations and promises of clinical trials, retreats, and private guides. I write about trip types like microdosing, therapeutic trips, and spiritual trips. And I write about psychedelic integration groups and communities, including raves and festivals, a little history of how that happens. Unfortunately, I didn't get to my first loft party, this very famous sort of rave that's been going on since the 80s, until like 2 weeks ago. So the book's already out. But maybe I'll have a chance to put it in one of my Substack essays. I write a free Substack, by the way, on food, mushrooms, and microbes and drugs. Um, so I also touch upon the psychopharmaceutical industry, the role of music in the psychedelic experience, which I just touch on that, but in the book. But as time has gone on, I think I'm going to delve into a little deeper in the future because I'm beginning to see a lot of connections between what's happening in music therapy, and certain areas of neuroscience and music, and then of course psychedelics and music. So there's definitely some interesting lines to be drawn there. Um, I also touch on seniors and psychedelics, and throughout I emphasize the importance of the indigenous perspective. So it's not only historic, and it's not only right use stuff that I write about, but also throughout the book, I ask the questions. Well, what would the indigenous perspective be about bad trips, for example? Those were hard questions to get answered, but I did the best I could. Um, it's a lot, but I've tried to organize the book in a way that allows the reader to really easily find out what she knows. So there's lots of subheads, So if you really don't care about the basic neuroscience as it's understood, yeah, fuck it. You can move on to a section about, retreats and what kind of challenges the, like, say, guides at retreats face and so on. Um, so, where does all this info come from in the book? Well, I reviewed a lot of scientific papers, many, 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 and tried to stay as current as I could. So I was making changes up until the last minute. And I interviewed the researchers. I used large scale anecdotal data like surveys, and I synthesized trip tales and other testimonials from like social news platforms like Reddit and Shroomery. Um, I mean, I gotta tell you, I fell down those wormholes when it came to reading people's trip tales and little, strange aspects of it. Like, I'm over 75 and I'm tripping, and I like seek out every one because it was so illuminating, but it had to be synthesized. And of course, I had to be um cognizant that I didn't know if it was all BS or not. This is one of the problems. So all that I had to kind of I had to modify in the book to make sure the reader understood where stuff was coming from. Um, I reported on the experiences of individuals I encountered, and that there were many, and my own experiences, which I kind of which I sort of scattered throughout the book. All the quotes in Have a Good Trip were reviewed by the folks who made them. And there are extensive notes in the back of the book. That said, there are undoubtedly some unintentional errors and omissions. That stuff drives me crazy. I find them occasionally. It can be very problematic to with the science continually evolving or political events changing, you know, it's hard to stay, it's hard to be as current. It's hard to be totally current with a book. So that's just something that I have to, live with. And given an opportunity for another edition, I'll get to fix. So I'll update. Um, so a few things about the writing that I wanted to share. Because when you read the book, you'll read the book, but this is stuff that won't be clear. Otherwise, you wouldn't know otherwise. So I'm really super, super conscious of the nomenclature that I use in this book. So some people call mushrooms a medicine, and others call them entheogens, and even others call them shrooms. So when we say medicine, we are implying the mushroom is being used for some sort of healing. And when we say entheogen or sacrament, we're implying that the mushroom is used for spiritual pursuits. And I recognize that there is that the indigenous and non-indigenous and some non-indigenous use for indigenous people and some non-indigenous people, the spiritual and healing effects are one and the same. But I have to set that aside for this particular nomenclature discussion. So shroom, to my ear, implies use for entertainment, which the bottom line is entertainment is the primary use for these mushrooms. So that what? Oh, I think somebody's sound is okay. But go ahead and interrupt me if you want to. I'm okay with that. So this is why throughout the book I use the word drug. I also say psilocybin and magic mushrooms, but I use drug the most because, and I know some people really object to that, but I use it because no matter how psilocybin is used, it is still a drug. It's a chemical substance that affects the function of living things. I really, during the course of my research, I learned about a fellow named Dr. Carl Hart. He's a neuroscientist at Columbia University who specializes in psychoactive drugs. And I really am quite sensitive to his argument that to avoid calling psilocybin a drug is to indulge in the notion of psychedelic exceptionalism, which in his mind is how rich white intellectuals separate their drug use from other dirtier type drugs. But regardless of the drug, people use them for the same reasons. They use them to alter their consciousness. Also, as a writer, if I use the word medicine, for example, to describe psilocybin, I would be, in effect, advocating for a certain application of psilocybin. And that is not what I set out to do with this book. In my view, it's up to the reader to decide how they might use the mushroom, not me. My job is to offer information that might help in the reader's decision making. If I call it a medicine, I'm advocating, I'm pushing them in a certain direction. And that's just not, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that's not what my mandate is. Yeah, and another language factor in the book is that I modify pretty much all claims that I repeat. So throughout the text and in conversations like this one, I use may and might and perhaps and possibly. And now, so these are adverbs that modify words like safety and mitigate, as in may be safe, might mitigate symptoms. And for some folks, this may seem like equivocating, but actually, in my view, it is more precise because it reflects the uncertainty of possibility that something unexpected might happen. And psychedelics is one subject where uncertainty reigns. There is so there's a lot of talk about the curative aspects of these mushrooms to treat mental disorders like depression, and I know that your group is very much up to speed on that subject. I try to remember that it's not the mushroom that causes positive or negative effects. It's the experience. And the experience is utterly subjective and non-reproducible, except for a few commonly reported factors that may occur like ego dissolution or having a mystical experience or empathy for oneself and others or paranoia or horrors. What's more, the trippers' interpretation of their experience is also highly individualized, and that's another reason why I would not make any kind of a recommendation. I just don't know enough about any particular reader's background, what's in, what they've experienced, what the drug history is. Yeah. Um, but I can report on the experiences other people have had, which, might serve as examples, um, including my own experiences. So, for example, um, I'm dealing with getting older, yet I have really no idea how I fit into the scheme of oldness. At my age, my grandparents had fully embraced the golf cart life in Florida. I may be old, but I'm not like 1975 old. Um, Nonetheless, I'm going to be a senior citizen later this month. And we're certainly during the course of writing this book in the last, few years, I've been feeling like I aged out of contemporary culture, like the human equivalent of VHS. I was encountering a lot of young people in the course of writing this book, and um, I just was kind of uptight around them. I had trouble recognizing what value I might have to others. But over the course of a year, tripping in various ways, I experienced a subtle but profound change in my attitude, really about everything, including aging. I had a trip that addressed my own fear of death, which I came to realize was feeding my insecurities about hitting that senior citizen mark. So I'm going to read a paragraph from the book about that. Actually, I have it up on my screen. In one trip, I spent what felt like a good deal of time in the body of my severely demented, near paralyzed mother. That may sound horrifying, but it wasn't. It was observational. I don't remember how I got into my mother's body, but once there, I couldn't move. I felt like my only functioning nerves ran down my spine, as if the living me was just a skull and a snaky spinal cord, like those creepy models you see in the chiropractor's office. All I could sense of my arms and legs was the space they were taking up. A couple of times I wiggled my fingers to be sure I still could, and I could, so confident I was still me, I sank back into her. At one point, I had to pee and I worried about getting to the bathroom since I was paralyzed. And then I realized I was wearing a diaper, so I didn't have to get myself up. Although I didn't ultimately pee myself, knowing I/my mother could, if necessary, was a tremendous relief. In fact, if I felt what she felt, she was mainly relieved. She didn't have to stress managing for herself anymore. So since then, I've wondered why this vision came to me at all. I thought at first it was because I was worried about my mother trapped in that body, fully aware, which is true. I was worried about her. But a year later, it occurred to me that maybe I was addressing aging in that vision. Now, I have long been aware I might have inherited the genes that caused both of my mother's debilitating conditions. And I realized maybe I was worried about myself. the vision or lucid dream, it surfaced those buried fears. And in the process, I think it de-escalated them. So the revelations I experienced had this like noetic quality, right? They resonated with truth. And I think that's because in my trips, I accessed knowledge I already had about myself, but for whatever reason, I didn't have access to. I think that the drug helped me see past these inhibitions and helped me recognize certain truths that were abiding in me all along, but I just couldn't see before. So while I share my own experiences where I think it will be helpful for the reader, this book isn't about me at all. However, over the course of about a year, I took magic mushrooms more times than I had taken in all my years previous. And I can honestly say, for me personally, it has been a very good trip indeed. I believe the trips helped me recognize deep-seated uncertainties like fear of inherited illness and put in perspective what is worth getting upset about and what is not. So I thought I'd wrap up this, kind of little introduction with an example of where I was post trips and where I was pre trips and where I ended up post trips. Um, so this is actually from the epilogue of the book, so I'll be reading again. We have a cabin in the North Fork Valley in western Colorado. Every couple of years, we throw a pig roast, and this involves stoking a tremendous pit fire down to ashes, preparing the pig, wrapping it up in cheesecloth, and burying it among the hot coals for about 12 hours. It is a tremendous hassle, but when it's done, the meat is tender and succulent, and we spend the afternoon sitting around picnic tables, drinking from a keg of beer, and eating pork tacos with our neighbors. My husband Kevin's family, including his 90-something mother, drive up from Santa Fe for the festivities. A few years ago, our son had offered to come out and manage the pig roast along with a passel of friends. I was all for passing the torch, but I ended up keeping a tight rein on, well, everything. I gave Mo and his friends very detailed directions on how to prep the fire and the pig to the point where they just come around for more orders rather than thinking through the next steps themselves. I think controlling the narrative so tightly squelched their initiative. As a result, I kind of dreaded the pig roast because it was so much work. Or rather, I made it so much work for me. I also cooked a few dinners for my husband's family, who loved to eat, and I'd serve meals the way I was raised in my dogmatic Italian family. A pasta dish, followed by a meat or vegetables, then a salad. 3 plates in that order. My Western family would wait for the courses, somewhat resignedly, the way you wait for a driver to get himself settled in and buckled up before he pulls out of the parking space you want. On the occasion when I would have to put the pasta, meat, and salad on the table at the same time, they inevitably piled everything into their pasta bowl. I served those meals a certain way, and for decades I was irritated that they never got with the program. The year of my trips, however, everything changed. Our son offered to manage the pig roast again, and I gave him the farmer's contact information and then forgot about it. 26 of his friends showed up at the cabin in cars and trucks, on motorcycles and by plane, women, men, dogs, and they set up a little tent city near our dilapidated barn. With Kevin's family, we had about 30 people sleeping at the house. That's a lot of flushes for our little 2-bath cabin. So rather than developing bathroom use rules, I rented a portable toilet and had it installed in the barn. After that, I sat back and let the pig roasters ask me what they needed. Okay to make pancakes? I showed them where the flour and baking powder were. What to stuff in the pig? I said, look around the garden and orchard and see what's growing. And so they filled the carcass with branches of oregano and sweet yellow plums. They asked about side dishes, and I gave them a couple of recipes and then spent the day antiquing with my sister-in-law. I made dinner for the old folks. The younger generation had a ongoing barbecue scene on one of the cabin porches. And I served pasta with bacon and beef stew with porcini mushrooms and avocados with red onions, enjoying a glass of wine while everyone ate in whatever order they liked. The young folks stoked a big fire in the pit for most of the day, and I didn't worry about them setting the mesa on fire. By midnight, it had burned down to coals, and they buried the pig and patted down the earth with the backs of their shovels, and I slept through it all. The next day, I went out to check on the pit. In the past, I'd spent mornings picking up beer bottles and cigarette butts, but not this time. It was tidy all around the pit. Just a few buckets of strategically placed water remained. When I walked back inside, I saw someone emerge from the bathroom. Despite a pre-pig roast meeting where the young folks were urged to use the portable toilet, most friends really preferred a proper restroom. And that's when I noticed the water rising in the toilet and slipping over the lip of the bowl. Once alerted, Mo and his friends got to work on it, but as they plunged, brown water started to burble up from the drain in the shower. They mopped that up too, and we put red tape across the door, and then someone washed a coffee mug in the kitchen sink and the shower filled with brown gunk again. By mid-morning, we had one working toilet, no draining kitchen sink or dishwasher, no clothes washer, and 50 people expected later in the afternoon. Our guests managed. The elderly pig roasters used our one functioning bathroom on a separate septic, and everyone else made do with the portable toilet, which we had strewn with branches of wild sage. But here's the thing. I never got upset. I guarantee in the past I would have been a ball of nerves on the edge of snapping, unable to laugh it off. But instead, the whole situation was just kind of ridiculous, made even sillier when the company that showed up to dredge our septic the next day consisted of two old cowboys whose business was called Cheerful Cesspools. The main thing I remember was the pig tasted fantastic. After everyone left, Mo's crew scattered across the country, and the family headed back to New Mexico. And Kevin told me his brother had said he'd never seen me so chill and relaxed. It's the mushrooms, Kevin replied. So this is what I think happened to me. My trips helped me feel less attached to convictions that were more about style than substance, like at what point in a meal you eat your salad. And once I stopped getting upset about salad, I started to feel more confident about the things I do care about, like letting the next generation run the show. Letting go of superficial convictions meant I didn't have to be right to be okay. I found I wasn't as reliant on praise nor as upset by criticism. I became less occupied with defending or promoting one position or another, and that created an opportunity in me to be more sensitive to other people, to be a better listener, to be curious. As a result, my interactions seem easier and more authentic today. Mary Casimano, who has worked in Johns Hopkins psychedelic program for years, said in a TED Talk that she had witnessed hundreds of tripping patients, and at the core of their experience was a reconnection with their authentic self. That's what I think happened and is still happening to me. For me, taking mushrooms carefully, mindfully, safely, and where it is legal has helped me shed fixed attitudes that have been getting in my way for years. And that made me feel ageless. Thanks for listening.
Wow, that was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. I'm happy to
Um,
share.
So I just want to interject before I open it up to anyone else. So one of the things when we were drafting the bill that Amy Paulin brought to the legislation,
Yeah.
we were very careful in ensuring that we did not say medicine. And whenever I talk about, what we're doing, I usually say a substance that promotes plasticity, neuroplasticity,
Mhm.
as a generic term for, drug, because I have an aversion to that, I guess, because of the negative connotations, as much as there are good drugs. But like,
Yeah.
it is interesting how much weight can be put on a simple word, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They have meaning
right.
beyond their meaning. For sure. But that's an interesting solution that you have come up with. The describing the sort of
what it
physical,
what it
ha-
does.
what it does. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that's not an unusual way for a drug to be described in general, so like a laxative, you know.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions online or in the room? Cammy?
Forgive me if my internet goes out. It's been wonky this entire session. So, but there was a bit in the book towards the end about the reemergence of religion and through mushrooms or through psychedelic experiences. Could you touch a little bit on that, the research that you did for that? Because that's something that's very fascinating for me, being a going from Christian to atheist to maybe there's something in the middle. So I'm very excited about to hear what you have to say about that.
I thought it was into one of the things I wrote about a lot of aspects of psychedelics and spirituality. What churches go through, what kind of challenges they face in terms of legalization, things like that. But I think one of my sort of favorite realizations about in writing that chapter was that certain establishment religions, because if they're not like top down in their structure, have the potential to be open to utilizing psychedelics to achieve the mystical experiences for their congregation. So, for example, in Judaism, because each synagogue is independent, right? They don't answer to a higher bureaucracy. They can decide. That synagogue can decide, that congregation can decide, we want to do this. We're going to go on retreat, or we're cool with our rabbi using psychedelics to help minister, not really the right word for Judaism, but to help minister for sacraments of different sorts. Same thing goes with Quakerism. The Quakers are not, they're more kind of a horizontal method of organization. There is no top-down hierarchy the way there is in, say, Catholicism. With the Quakers, each individual friend Quaker meeting house is its own, and its congregation is its own thing. They make decisions for themselves. And then, but then they have, it's sort of the way we're structured politically. There's like kind of bigger and bigger groups of meeting houses, representing different districts and so on. And then they meet, to decide whether they're going to that the entire, say, I don't know what their structural name is, or I've forgotten, but let's just say that like kind of region of Quaker meeting houses, Quaker meeting houses of Pennsylvania, for example, would agree that mystical experiences were acceptable if psychedelics were used. So and then it keeps going up and up and up, or not up and up, but for Quakers, it's like grows, wider and wider and wider as more and more meeting houses and congregations agree on it. So those structures, Judaism and Quakers, allow for something like psilocybin to be used as part of their ceremony. Um, which is an interesting thing to think about, that you won't really see the Pope. You need like the Pope to say, okay, before you're going to see it happening in the cathedral, in Siena. So it's like, I don't know, there's something to be said about these non-bureaucratic structures and their ability to adapt to future uses and, things like psychedelics.
Yeah, but when you're taking a substance that does open you up to the beauty and mystery and things, I mean, for me, it's natural to say that that's like a spiritual experience because it's like, oh my God, my heart is so open, my chakras are spinning, whatever you're going to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but
And a
it's
lot of people do,
right.
for sure. But, we're talking about, I mean, and I'm in just in that one respect, I'm, kind of interested in how an established religion might find, what parameters an established religion would have to have in order to embrace psychedelic use in the model that exists for them, right? Because individually, yeah.
Yeah, but so I worked substance security for a Hasidic Jewish music rave festival.
Oh,
And so I saw it in action where they had everyone went to the Shabbat dinner and the rabbis blessed it, and they wanted to encourage more natural substances that promote neuroplasticity. But they brought other things that were like, I don't know what this is doing because I feel really weird. And we tested it and we are like, well, maybe you shouldn't take that.
yeah.
But it was all at the blessing of the spiritual leaders, and they led the experience. It was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this is an ongoing phenomena, that seems to, I mean, it's not like it's catching like wildfire from what I can tell. My research doesn't suggest it, but there are definitely groups, that are forming around the use of psychedelics and not just, as a beard to use them, which, kind of think Zydor feels more like a beard for use of psychedelics than some of the other groups that I've encountered who, were very, I know, seemed to me, they struck me as more sincere in their use and application. But it's the whole spectrum is represented out there.
Right, right. Another thing I wanted to touch on is you talked about using the stories of people who have achieved many levels already. And that's one of the things, the most frequent inquiries we get here at the farm or when we're vending somewhere are from people in their 60s or 70s. And, just like we were at a veteran owned brewery, and it was, Vietnam vets were very interested in using something different than what they'd been prescribed that wasn't currently working. And it's just, it's a matter of, I've tried all these things and nothing has been effective. And,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's encouraging to see that people, I mean, I guess it's a testament to the fact that our current system doesn't really work, that people are resorting to being criminalized essentially for
Yeah.
resulting or
Yeah, it's really a heartbreak when people who are in search of relief are not getting the care they need. The drugs are that they're being given are, they haven't changed in like 50 years. It's the same old shit. It's effective, 30% of the time or something, which is not bad. That's probably pretty similar to what psilocybin would be, but to not, it's the compassionate care piece. It would be wonderful to see more people who thought they might benefit have that kind of access. And groups like Heroic Hearts are effective at getting vets down to retreats, and they have pretty good financing networks and can help them afford it. And I just recently, have a Somebody who works for a friend of mine, her son was suffering from PTSD, and I connected her with her with Heroic Hearts, and her son called them up, and supposedly he's doing great. So, I mean, but he had to go, he couldn't do that at home, he had to go off campus. He had to go to Jamaica or Costa Rica or
Right.
something to do his treatments, but they helped. So, it's a real thing. It's the sort of difficulty of this situation where since we don't have any kind of regulations that are going to protect people, everybody's sort of on their own, and there's the plenty of bad actors, or I wouldn't say bad actors, but it's probably plenty of irresponsible actors out there, take mushrooms 12 times and then they're like, I think I understand it all, and I'm going to be able to treat you, you know, who has like, OCD or something, that's going on for sure. And that's ultimately why I wrote the book, was so that there would be, it's not instructions, but there should be some kind of, you know, material that didn't have any advocacy attached to it that folks could read and say, okay, this is how this is used by some people for some purposes, that kind of stuff. And I thought it was fills a gap that exists right now. And that gap is sort of heartbreaking, especially heartbreaking for some people. I mean, for someone like me, it was like it just was, it benefited my life, but it's not like I was paralyzed by mental distress or something like some of the people that I've talked to in the past. For them, it's a much more of a kind of make or break situation, I think.
Can you talk a little bit about the bad trips you wrote about?
Oh yeah. The thing about bad trips is that, well, first of all, I just, um, when people say there's no bad trips, there's only challenging trips, or, you don't get the trip you want, you get the trip you need. I totally am calling bullshit on that. I'm sorry. I just think it's nonsense. And the reason why is because, I mean, there's a really good example that just happened last year. Is this fellow from the Alaskan Airlines pilot tried down the plane, was most likely suffering, or it seems like he was suffering from derealization. He'd done a trip. Derealization is rare, but it's recorded. I mean, it's a side effect. It's like a bad trip, extended difficulty, right? And he hadn't slept for days. Also, a relatively rare but noted side effect of some psilocybin trips. And the one side of the media was like jumping all over saying, you see, psilocybin is really bad, and it's like we can't get behind it. And the other side was saying, no, it's out of your body in 12 hours. Don't blame the psilocybin. You're just undermining the cause. And what happened to that guy in the meantime?
Right.
That's what pisses me off. He just became this tool, and the truth is that he needed care that he couldn't get because he was a pilot. And if he came clean with being depressed, he would have lost his job. So anyway, the bad trips, I am convinced, after my research has convinced me, that bad trips are real, that they happen quite frequently, that most people are able to resolve their experiences, in their own minds or with integration therapy. And of that, 30% or so people who have bad trips, in any given time, there's a small percentage that have extended difficulties, and they suck. They're really problematic and they need help. And there's some therapists who actually specialize in that. Like, I interviewed one fellow in Australia. His name is Carol, Dr. Carol. It's called the Wild Mind Institute. And he does these really interesting analyses he's treated like hundreds of people who've suffered from extended difficulties from bad trips. And, and I had found in interviewing many people and analyzing all these trip tales, that there were certain archetypes of bad trips. And so when I talked to him, I found that yes, indeed, he was seeing the same thing. And his research was, was more weighted than mine, because he was actually the therapist for these people. And the archetypes were, the most scary kind were these existential problems, bad trips that people would have, where they had derealization, or thought they were in a dream, or weren't sure what was real and what was not. And this is like a very problematic side effect. So I write about that at length, but I also point out that, people can swerve into a bad trip because of all kinds of things, not just things they can control, like their setting and set, but also stuff they can't control, like stepping in dog poop can flip somebody into a bad trip.
Yeah.
So I tried to express in the chapter how vulnerable the psyche was. And also, if you're going to categorize something as a bad trip in a like clinical trial or whatever, which is like not so easy to do, because what if you have a piece of a trip is a bad trip? Or what if your integration turns out to have you re-examine your trip, and you look back at it and you go, wow, that was actually really, bad. So it's really a shapeshifter. But there are a lot of different ways it happens. Being dosed, for example. I love folks that do the work you do, like Zendo. And for example, I spent a whole day at the Zendo camp once at Burning Man. Wow. There was a lot of confused people that were wandering through that kind of got calmed down. Um, so, I mean, we saw dosing at Burning Man, and then there's problems with HPPD, of course. You're probably familiar with that. But then, do you know about wood lovers paralysis? So there's all kinds of things that can cause a bad trip, and harms of all sorts. And, I just don't mince words about it, because I'm not advocating, I'm not hoping you do one thing or another. I'm not selling anything besides the book, of course.
Anyone else have any questions? You guys know? Comments? I'm excited to read the book. Andrew, did you get it yet?
I have the website page open.
Nice.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to contact me if you want to do a book club talk. Sometimes people will get curious about background things. Thanks, Pam. She's got dance coffee. That's nice. That's got some boo-boos in it, by the way. That's driving me mad, but
Pammy, have you already read the whole book?
I'm sorry, I missed the last
Have you already read the whole book?
I haven't read the whole book. I'm about a third into it. I have terrible ADHD, so I get very distracted, but it has kept my interest for sure. And I'm just really excited to get to I skimmed through the whole thing first, and
find
that's
your
when the
quotes?
religious part got exciting, huh?
Did you find your quotes?
I did.
Everybody looks for I do too. Everybody looks for the quotes. Don't worry, as I said, all the quotes were checked. I have nothing. This is not like newspapers where, you look for that candid moment. When people said a quote, if I ran it by them, I wanted to know, is this what you meant? Because we're talking about drugs here. Is this what you meant? Yeah. And
Absolutely. And thank you so much for reaching out and including me in your project. I
don't know. It was great to meet. It was great to meet you when I did, and all that. So it's been an ongoing pleasure, without a doubt.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Eugenia. Now, one of the things that with our advocacy, we Amy Paulin wants to put together. You do?
Yeah.
Okay, she wants to get a hearing scheduled at the Capitol, and she wants to make sure we have some of the leading experts involved. So I might be tapping you for some, contacts, or even have you, come too, because the wider a net that we can provide for touching on the breadth of all of the reasons that people should have access, I think the better.
Yeah.
And that's she was one of our guest speakers a few meetings ago, and it was recently, and I don't know if I shared it with anybody here. And she shared that her son suffers from cluster headaches, and that's why
Oh,
she is very knowledgeable and very passionate about this. It's a personal thing for her. Well, it was like 2 or 3 weekends ago, he had a really bad episode, and she is now very, very motivated to make sure that this gets the attention that it deserves. So
yeah. I know somebody who does that science, that work, Emmanuel Schindler at Yale. But here's the problem. Scientists are going to be um, very nervous about advocacy,
right.
Well, so
but I think it's more the facts.
Problem.
She wants someone that, has the facts. That's all.
Well, there's a new book out about the cluster headache phenomena and how
Joanna Kempton.
Yeah, she might be a good person to tell some of those stories, because the citizen science aspect of, that's like, in a way, the best material, the most persuasive material. Here's people coming forward and saying, look, give us a chance to learn more, in a more controlled environment.
Now, you're in New York, right? Somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I actually do political stuff all the time. I'm well aware of how, like, I was on Prop 1, been on Prop 1 since 2018.
Oh, fantastic.
We were really, it was like in a time when I personally was not happy with the outcome of the election. I was very pleased about the Prop 1 success. And in fact, we're meeting, I run a group of about 600 women that work on reproductive rights in New York. And so we're meeting tomorrow, about 65 of us, to here, in fact, at my apartment.
How many toilets do you have?
I know. Yeah, it's just not going to be pretty, but it'll be fun. And we're going to talk about how to export Prop 1. We have legislators going to be talking with us and stuff like that. So anyway, I'm very familiar with the process, and I know you got to be a long distance runner to work legislative stuff.
For sure.
Legislation. Yeah. When was the first year that she submitted the bill?
This year.
Well, but it wasn't in the last legislature?
So there's been several bills. Linda Rosenthal has a decrim bill, that's A-114. Pat Burke has 2 bills.
The Pat Burke problem. I've heard about this. Yeah.
And so we've been advocating, up until, we're still advocating for all bills, because we feel that any access is better than no access.
Yeah.
And so, but now that Amy is championing a bill that our team put together, we're really trying to.
She's Assembly, right?
She's the chair of the Health Committee. Yeah.
Okay, but she's Assembly, so you still need a Senate.
We're in talks with a couple people. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Great. Because once you have that, then you can start doing some hardcore, pressure.
Yeah. Yep.
Next 10 years. No, sorry.
But that's it. So Corinne, who is not on the call, I don't think, but she's our lead policy person, and she's on vacation in Florida right now, but she has been working on the Death with Dignity Act for the last 10 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we know how long it takes to make things move.
Yeah, it really does. Unless there's some kind of news thing that gets everybody excited, Well,
I will say, like, there's been no no's. Like, we've met with dozens and dozens of lawmakers, and everybody is interested. No one has turned aside and said, this is ridiculous.
Are they co-sponsoring?
We got, so Pat Burke's bill, we between our advocacy and I'm sure some of the work that he was doing, he went from being the only sponsor on the bill to over 50.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So do you have a Senate version of that bill?
Yep. Senator Natalia Fernandez is the who's the chair of the Substance Abuse Committee, and she's on the Mental Health Committee.
Excellent. Well, that one sounds like it's got legs.
There's a lot of movement, but that's, so they are calling psilocybin-containing mushrooms medicine, and
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing that we have cautioned is that doctors in other states and anywhere the DEA controls their license are balking. And the only reason cannabis was allowed to be medical was because of this memo that was passed. And, you know, that removed some of the roadblocks to doctors suggesting someone, you know, would be right for using that as a medicine. But that doesn't exist for psilocybin. So there's Utah passed a bill that said that psilocybin-containing mushrooms could be stored and distributed in hospitals. And guess how many hospitals signed up to do this?
Zero.
Zero, I bet.
Exactly, zero. And so they passed the bill, and they were like, "Yay, we did it!" And then it's an impractical, bill that doesn't actually do anything. Mm-hmm. And so the two bills that Pat Burke and Natalia Fernandez have put together have some of those same challenges because they're calling a Schedule I controlled substance a medicine.
Do they match the two bills otherwise? I mean, do they match? Are the two bills identical?
Yes. But the other one creates a pilot program specifically for veterans and first responders in Western New York.
Oh, so they're not exact.
Both bills exist in the Senate and the Assembly.
Okay.
Identically.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but that's why we're trying to
get them.
Yeah, but our bill has promise and has some more weight behind it, I think. And I feel like if we can get the people to sponsor or co-sponsor this bill that we got to co-sponsor the other bills, it will have real legs.
Yeah, and then you need your Senate, but you got somebody in mind. That's good.
Yeah.
And then you've got to start all over again in 2 years or whatever it is. So, yeah. I know.
Well, Eugenia, we have a couple more internal items I want to just go over real quick, but thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to spend time with us. And
thank you.
I've recorded it and we'll post it to our YouTube channel and our website shortly. So
fantastic. Well, thanks for inviting me, and it's been a pleasure, and best of luck to all of you in your endeavors. I look forward to hearing, staying apprised.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, that was fantastic. Yeah, she was good. Yeah, I can't wait to read that. That's going to be really cool. Yes. I haven't ordered it either. So no. So just a couple other announcement things that how do I make this? Yeah, no. View. Okay. Gallery. So the fall fungal frolic on Saturday was a huge success. We had I would say over 80 people actually in the room. I think all of you were there. And we raised over $3,000. So yeah, that is huge. And that we were able to finish the 501c3 filing. So Allison sent that off. And now we have enough money to finish the 501c4 filing that was in hiatus because we just ran out of money. Let's see. And then the New Yorkers for Wellness options. So there's 4 or 3 different things. There's New Yorkers for Wellness and Health Alternatives. So that's our 501c3. So that's NYMHA. And then NYMHA is New Yorkers for Mental Health Alternatives. And then the New Yorkers for Wellness Options is like a working group title that is an umbrella for other groups, because 501c.
What was the first one?
New Yorkers for Wellness and Health Alternatives, because we wanted to keep it the same, like alternative thing. So it's NYMHA, NYWA, and then NYWO.
And they would both fall under NYWO.
Yes, they are both under NYWO, as well as like the Psychedelic Sisterhood and Brooklyn Psychedelic Society and Psychedelic Assembly and the Psychedelic Society of Western New York and a couple other groups that have all said, oh, we want to join together.
They would all be part of that.
Yeah. I still have not yet heard from any other mushroom farmers though, which is somewhat disappointing.
Really?
Yeah, except for Steve Gabriel, who is the one that was like, I'm going to send this out to everybody. Let's see, but on the farming front, the Rensselaer County Farm Bureau all-member meeting voted unanimously to adopt language that on creating a policy for psilocybin-containing mushrooms being an agricultural crop. So
Didn't even raise an eyebrow. They're just like, anyone like have any comments, discussion?
no, all in favor? Boop. Every single hand immediately went up. It was
the weirdest thing.
and it was mostly farmers who have been farming for decades. So it was not, there were very few under 40 people in the room. And I was just like, Amy goes, they're talking about drugs, right? But cannabis was just approved as an agricultural crop in New York. And so as this is something else that can be grown and benefit New York farmers, why not start talking about it? But I was flabbergasted that there was not even a single question asked, not even a question.
Right. And we're gonna bring it to the state convention and see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah,
They might be paying more attention there, but I'm going as like a delegate in December, the first week to see. And a few other things
Sorry.
about indoor farming.
Yeah, Avery, what exactly did that group do? That they wanted to recommend that psilocybin be included as just as an agricultural product? Would that then go to some legislative body, or is that?
It's an advocacy group. So the New York Farm Bureau is the New York branch of the Federal Farm Bureau.
Right.
And we belong to the Rensselaer County Farm Bureau. And so we proposed it at a board meeting. They adopted it as a thing to talk about at their all-member meeting. The all-member meeting unanimously adopted it as a policy that Rensselaer County farmers want to see put on the state policy handbook. And now Amy and I are going as a delegate and an alternate to present to all of the counties in New York why this is something that we should have as an official policy, which then would be put in like the national policy handbook.
If it's not shut down.
Right. Okay.
So it's just bringing the conversation to
right.
another demographic. This is farmers and not like, oh, here's a bunch of hippies or whatever.
Right. No, it's interesting. Excellent.
Yeah. And then another way that we're branching out of the psychedelic bubble is the article that I finished on psilocybin use amongst cluster headache sufferers is going to be published in the spring mycofile. And I'm so happy with this article. I was able to interview someone in Mexico, someone in Michigan, and someone in Canada. So a cluster headache person in each of those countries. And because the mycofile goes to all three countries, it's all of North America. And I got the blessing of all of the cluster headache, cluster buster folks, and ran it by them. And so this is another way that we're trying to start that or continue that conversation outside of like psychedelic circles. Some old business, the Rosendale panel. I still have to follow up with the Todd who is editing the sound, and I just got a several gigabytes of data from the fall fungal frolic that include interviews and the panel and just some B-roll and stuff. The videographer did say there was some microphone issues with the panel that we might have to massage. So if anyone knows how to massage audio files and video, I'm gonna plug it in and see what I can see what it looks like. But I mean, they did like 2 or 3 different cameras and walked around and interviewed people. So there's definitely going to be a lot of material. And then upcoming things, let's see. Just so you guys are all aware, we are most likely moving Collar City Mushrooms. The building that we've been operating in has sold, and so we're in talks right now with Indian Ladder Farms to operate there, and we are doing a dinner there. So if anyone is interested in another one of these mushroom dinner experiences, it's going to be December 7th at Indian Ladder Farms. And we are still pursuing keeping some presence here in Troy because we don't want to leave the city entirely. And we're going to have like a private supper club at Dave and Corinne's house. So if you want to, we're not going to advertise it, and this is going to be a invite only kind of thing. So if anyone's interested, let me know. Some of the new business, the Massachusetts Prop 4, I'm sure everyone is aware of, failed. There was a 56 to 47% or something like that, or 43%, whatever. But there was a lot of infighting amongst the psychedelic community in Massachusetts, and a whole subset of people were actively advocating that it didn't pass. And so and they fought at the educational efforts.
Oh dear.
Joe's not on, but does anyone know if the New Jersey vote happened? Because when I was last talked to the New Jersey advocates, they said that they were going to vote on their bill before the end of the year. No. Alex, are you in New Jersey?
I'm not, but I know someone who's very much involved. I was just about to text them.
Okay, yeah. Well, if they know, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I just read something here, says New Jersey Senate panel approves psilocybin legislation bill. New Jersey Senate committee has approved a bill that would legalize a therapeutic psilocybin program in the states. With even hesitant lawmakers saying that they're coming around on the psychedelics proposal. That was October 7.
Yeah. So that was the committee. So that approved it to go to the to full vote. So I guess that it sounds like it hasn't happened yet.
I don't think it's happened yet, no.
Yeah, but that's exciting that even like the hesitant lawmakers have now,
Talking
come on
about
board.
it, yeah.
Let's see. And Allison, who also is not on the call, she's going to Iceland and is going to be on a panel in Iceland with Merlin Sheldrake, Paul Stamets, and do you remember who the other? There was a third person. So it's just that's there. And she's gonna get to hang out in Iceland with these guys for a couple days.
Wow.
And then Pammy, you put together the list of ketamine assistant therapists, but we never drafted an email to them. Right?
I put a few together. I wasn't sure where we ended up as far as what happened after that. That was for.
You did actually email them?
No.
You just made the list. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that we should like craft an email to send out to those organizations, those businesses, to say, hey, this is something that's happening, you should get informed, kind of thing.
Absolutely. Okay.
Maybe we can talk about that at our next marketing meeting. And this is another really exciting thing, is former Albany Police Chief Brendan Cox, who was a guest speaker here a few months ago, is now the interim police chief in Albany again. And so I emailed him this morning about talking to Albany City Council members to, and having a panel maybe in Albany to see if we can pitch the decrim referendum in Albany. And I know he is very much in favor of not persecuting people who are using substances in this way. So I was like, well, I heard that on WAMC,
Oh,
and I was
right,
like,
because he's filling in for the other guy that
'Cause
is
Eric-
going back to.
yeah, Eric left. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, holy shit, we should act right now.
Avery, I think we probably have a better shot at that, just to de-escalate the issue on the police side than in any of these other bills. Everyone can agree, hey, it's not a priority for police. Come on.
Right. I agree. And I really think like they did in Massachusetts, they worked at cities first, and they got like six or seven cities to say that, it's the lowest police priority. Right.
Yeah.
I think we should just start identifying cities and trying again. I mean, even Troy, I think we should try in Troy again. Like, why not?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. And Ong, when I texted some of our legislative group, and Ong was like, oh, I know some of the city council members, so he's gonna actually start like poking them to see what the temperature might be. So like if we, approach some, with some knowledge already, I think it might be successful. The last kind of nebulous new business is that we do want to still pick a place and a date to do a Brooklyn and possibly a Buffalo screening and panel with Reconsider. Reconsider let us use their footage at the Fall Fungal Frolic fundraiser. And I know that they're really excited to continue this advocacy, but they've been working on a documentary on something happening in Israel, or like the conflict in Israel. So that's taken up a lot of their bandwidth. So,
well, Avery, I could look into the Brooklyn Public Library across the street. They have a couple auditoriums, depending on which size we're thinking of.
Well, and I know we've talked about that, but I think Colin or somebody looked at it and they don't do, or Pammy, you did, and they don't do public things anymore.
Yeah, they don't do any anymore since 2020, unfortunately.
Oh no.
Yeah, I reached out to them because
Right.
they're not far from me, and they're very adamant about they're not doing that anymore. Now it's only for like, I guess, private in their system people that do like courses and classes and things like that, but nothing to the public anymore.
Well, that's a shame.
And it's such a beautiful space.
Yeah,
It would be perfect. Yeah, so we're keeping looking.
How many does the psychedelic assembly space hold?
I believe they hold about 150 in their main large room, and then if we had spillover for like the bookstore area, that would be about 60, I think. Which they had a whole conference there. That's not a bad space to have it.
Cool.
Right. Synchronicity.
Yeah. Well, I would like to get that, like, at least less nebulous on the calendar. Yeah, and the only other thing that I had is our next meeting is Tuesday, December 10th, and Dr. Michael Bug is going to be our guest speaker. He was Paul Stamets' mycology teacher in Washington State, and he's on the committee for medicinal mushrooms with me, and I put together a couple slides on psilocybin and cluster headaches, which he had never heard about. He didn't know about cluster headaches at all until he read the article I wrote, and he was like, "What is this? And how did I not know about it?" He was so excited because he has been advocating for psilocybin-containing mushrooms in the Northwest for decades. And so he at every conference he goes to, that's part of his presentation is on psilocybin-containing mushrooms. So he'll be talking about what he's been doing on the West Coast. Alex, did you find any more New Jersey information?
No, just what I put in the chat. It seems like it's moving along, but it's up to the legislators. But I also just wanted to add, so here in New York City, we've been working on getting a meeting with City Council for decrim. It's been pretty slow moving, but I think if there is movement in another city in New York, that certainly would help.
Have you been able to contact the city council members? Like, have they been responsive at all, or?
Not really. I got one meeting, and I got a couple of responses, but no, there's like a lot of follow-up I still need to do. So.
Well, and that's part of why we wanted to do like a panel and talk thing in the city to hopefully garner some more interest and, educate people, yeah, cool. Well, yeah, keep us dialed in for on your efforts too, man. And awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Also, before we end, I did drop Eugenia's book link in the chat. I can also send it to you, Avery, so when you send out the email with this video, everybody can have it.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, baby. All right. Bye, all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you, everyone.